Hey guys, in this month's Historical Fiction 101, I'm going to be giving you some book recommendations for the rest of the year, starting from July to December. So yeah guys, as I always do, it's reached the halfway point of the year, so it's time to do another one of these videos where I'm giving you some book recommendations for some historical fiction books that are coming out for the remainder of the year. So as I said at the intro of this video, starting in July, going all the way through December, I have 20 books that I'm going to be sharing here with you guys. Yeah, I'm going to be looking down at my computer so I can read the synopsises for you. All of these are coming straight from Goodreads, so if you want to sit here and listen to me and pull up your Goodreads, and if you want to add any of these books, feel free to do so. So my first recommendation that I have here, I do believe this is a historical fiction book, you guys, because when I was looking through somebody else's review, they kind of made reference that it takes place in like the 1800s. And so I do believe this is definitely historical fiction, you guys, judging from a few of the reviews I read, because yeah, the plot synopsis on Goodreads doesn't say. But yeah, this is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, and I'm super excited about this, you guys. When Alex Easton, a retired soldier, receives word that their childhood friend Madeline Usher is dying, they race to the ancestral home of the Ushers in the remote countryside of Ruritania. What they find there is a nightmare of fungal growths and possessed wildlife surrounding a dark, pulsing lake. Madeline sleepwalks and speaks in strange voices at night, and her brother Roderick is consumed with a mysterious malady of the nerves. Aided by a redoubtable British mycologist and a baffled American doctor, Alex must unravel the secret of the House of Usher before it consumes them all. Oh my god, you guys. When I first saw this book, and it had to do like a retelling of the Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, which is one of my all-time favorite Edgar Allan Poe short stories, I was like, hell yes, give this to me. And plus this cover, you guys, oh my god, this is the most bizarre, freaky cover I've ever seen in my life, and I am loving it. Joan by Catherine J. Chin. France, 1412. France is mired in a losing war against England. Its people are starving. Its king is in hiding. From this chaos emerges a teenage girl who will turn the tide of battle and lead the French to victory. An unlikely hero whose name will echo across the centuries. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. This is just a retelling of the story of Joan of Arc, and I'm just so baffled that there's just not been more Joan of Arc retellings in recent years. I feel like there's just a very minor slew of books. So I'm glad to see a book coming out here in the year of 2022 for Joan of Arc. Should be good, you guys. I'm excited. Cradles of the Reich by Jennifer Coburn. At Heimhochland, hopefully I got that pronounced, at Heimhochland, a Nazi breeding home in Bavaria, three women's fates are irrevocably intertwined. Gundi is a pregnant university student from Berlin. An Aryan beauty, she's secretly a member of a resistance group, oh my god. Hilda, only 18, is a true believer in the cause and is thrilled to carry a Nazi official's child. And Irma, a 44-year-old nurse, is desperate to build a new life for herself after personal devastation. All three have everything to lose. This sounds great. Yeah, guys, a Nazi breeding home in Bavaria, which these were real things. Yeah, guys, these were real things in Nazi Germany, because they were all about, you know, that purity and whatnot. This sounds fantastic. Hester by Lori Lico Albanese. Who is the real Hester Prynne? Isabel Gamble is a young seamstress carrying generations of secrets when she sets sail from Scotland in the early 1800s with her husband Edward, an apothecary who has fallen under the spell of opium. His pile of debts have forced them to flee Edinburgh for a fresh start in the New World. But only days after they've arrived in Salem, Edward abruptly joins a departing ship as a medic, leaving Isabel penniless and alone in a strange country, forced to make her way by any means possible. When she meets a young Nathaniel Hawthorne, the two are instantly drawn to each other. He is a man haunted by his ancestors, who sent innocent women to the gallows, while she is an unusually gifted needleworker, troubled by her own strange talents. As the weeks pass and Edward's safe return grows increasingly unlikely, Nathaniel and Isabel go closer and closer together. They are a muse and a dark storyteller, the enchanter and the enchanted, but which is which? So yeah, this is pretty much like It's not a straight out retelling of the Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. It seems like this is a book that's like, how does Nathaniel Hawthorne get influenced and inspired to write the Scarlet Letter? And the Scarlet Letter is definitely one of my top favorite American classics, you guys, and I'm really looking forward to this. The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This is another book that's at the top of my list to get, you guys. Carlotta Moreau, a young woman growing up in a distant and luxuriant estate, safe from the conflict and strife of the Yucatan Peninsula, the only daughter of either a genius or a madman. Montgomery Lawton, a melancholic overseer with a tragic past and a propensity for alcohol, an outcast who assists Dr. Moreau with his scientific experiments, which are financed by the Lizaldes, owners of a magnificent hacienda and plentiful coffers. The hybrids, the fruits of the doctor's labor, destined to blindly obey their creator and remain in the shadows, a motley group of part human, part animal monstrosities, all of them living in a perfectly balanced and static world, which is jolted by the abrupt arrival of Eduardo Lizalde, a charming and careless son of Dr. Moreau's patron, who will unwittingly begin a dangerous chain reaction. And yeah, this is pretty much like some sort of retelling of the island of Dr. Moreau, you guys, but like giving it this this twist, you know, since it's by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I absolutely loved what she did with Mexican Gothic, and I can't wait to read this. The Lindbergh Nanny by Marianne Fredericks. Betty Gow is known by another name, the Lindbergh Nanny. When toddler Charles Lindbergh Jr. is kidnapped from his parents' weekend home in Hopewell, New Jersey in 1932, his parents are frantic, his grandmother devastated, and the media rabid. Betty, amid the maelstrom and named suspect herself, is determined to find out who has taken him. Charles Lindbergh was already famous for his flight across the Atlantic, the golden boy of America, with his wealthy and lovely wife, Anne Morrow Lindbergh, beside him, when Betty joined the household to look after little Charlie. A Scottish immigrant deciphering the rules of her new homeland and its East Coast elite, Betty finds Colonel Lindbergh eccentric and often odd, Mrs. Lindbergh yet kind yet nervous, and Charlie simply a darling. Far from home and bruised from a love affair gone horribly wrong, Betty finds comfort in caring for the child and warms to the attentions of handsome sailor Henrik, sometimes known as Red. So yeah, this is pretty much about the real life kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby and whatnot, and I guess the nanny's involvement or not involvement and how she felt during this time. I have heard about this kidnapping. You guys, I have heard about this, but I honestly don't really know too terribly much about it, so I'm kind of interested to read this book and learn a bit more historical context. The Soviet Sisters by Anika Scott. Sisters Vera and Mara were brought up as good Soviets, obedient despite hardships of poverty and tragedy, committed to communist ideals and loyal to Stalin. Several years after fighting on the Eastern Front, both women find themselves deep in the mire of conflicts shaping a new world order in 1947 Berlin. When Myra, an interpreter, gets entangled in Vera's cryptic web of deceit and betrayal, she must make desperate choices to survive and protect those she loves. 9 years later, Myra is a prisoner in a Siberian work camp when Vera, I'm not sure what that word means, but I'm assuming it means like she's a spy for the KGB, has cause to reopen her case file and investigate the facts behind her sister's conviction all those years ago in Berlin. As Vera retraces the steps that brought them both to that pivotal moment in 1947, she unravels unexpected truths and discoveries that call into question the very history the Soviets were working hard to cover up. Oh my God, I would do like Soviet era, like Russia during this time period, like in the 40s and 50s and whatnot. The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. Set in Florence, the 1550s, Lucrezia, third daughter of the Grand Duke, is comfortable with her obscure palace in the Palazzo, free to wonder at its treasures, observe its clandestine workings, and to devote herself to her own artistic pursuits. But when her older sister dies on the eve of her wedding to the ruler of Ferrara, Moderna and Reggio, Lucrezia is thrust unwittingly into the limelight. The Duke is quick to request her hand in marriage, and her father just as quick to accept on her behalf. Having barely left girlhood behind, Lucrezia must now make her way in a troubled court whose customs are opaque and where her arrival is not universally welcomed. Perhaps most mystifying of all is her new husband himself, Alfonso. Is he the playful sophisticate he appeared to before their wedding, the aesthetic happiest in the company of artists and musicians, or the ruthless politician before whom even his formidable sisters seem to tremble? As Lucrezia sits in constricting finery for a painting intended to preserve her image for centuries to come, one thing becomes worryingly clear. In the court's eyes, she has one duty: to provide the heir who will shore up the future of the Farnese dynasty. Until then, for all of her rank and nobility, the new duchess's future hangs entirely in the balance. Yes, I love this. Because, yeah, this is about Lucrezia de Medici. I've just been really fascinated with the de Medicis in recent years. So, yeah, this should be really great. Haven by Emma Donoghue. In 7th century Ireland, a scholar and priest called Art has a dream telling him to leave the sinful world behind. Taking 2 monks, young Trurian and old Cormac, he rows down the river Shannon in search of an isolated spot on which to found a monastery. Drifting out into the Atlantic, the 3 men find an impossibly steep bare island inhabited by tens of thousands of birds and claim it for God. In such a place, what will survival mean? 3 men vow to leave the world behind them. They set out in a small boat for an island their leader has seen in a dream, with only faith to guide them. What they find is the extraordinary island now known as Skellig Michael. And then that's kind of it for the plot right there. That sounds really good. It sounds very different for historical fiction that I don't typically read. Address of Violet Tefeta? Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Lucy Duff Gordon knows she is talented. She sees color, light, fabric, and texture in ways few other people do. But is the world ready for her? A world dominated by men who would try to control her and use her arts for their own gain. After being deserted by her wealthy husband, Lucy is desperate to survive. She turns to her one true talent to make a living. As a little girl, the dresses she made for her dolls were the envy of her group of playmates. Now she uses her courageous innovations in Belle Epoque fashion to support her own little girl. Lucille knows it is an uphill battle, and a single woman is not supposed to succeed on her own, but she refuses to give up. She will claim her place in the fashion world. Failure simply is not an option. Then, on a frigid night in 1912, Lucy's life changes once more. When she becomes one of 706 people to survive the sinking of the Titanic. She could never have imagined the effects the disaster would have on her career, her marriage to her second husband, and her legacy. But no matter what life throws at her, Lucille will live on, a trailblazing and fearless fashion icon, never letting go of what she worked so hard to earn. I'm really in love with this. Lucy Duff Gordon. She was a real historical figure, obviously. She was a fashion designer. She really was on the Titanic. She was a survivor. And yeah, there was a lot of controversy with her and her husband because the whole thing with the Titanic, women and children first, and because of their wealth and privilege, her husband was able to sit and manipulate his way and get onto one of the lifeboats and whatnot. And there was a lot of controversy with that her husband got on there. So yeah, I'm definitely intrigued about this to kind of get like her background, her history, really focusing more on her as a fashion icon and whatnot. And it seems like the Titanic is just a really small part of it, which is fine. Gildan Mountain by Kate Manning. In a voice full of questions and sly humor, Sylvie recounts the story of leaving her family's snowbound mountain cabin to work in the local manor house for the Pagets, owners of the marble mining company that employs her father and dominates the town. Sharp-eyed Sylvie is awed by the luxury around her, fascinated by her employer, the charming Countess Inga, and confused by the erratic affections of Jasper, the bookish heir to the family fortune. When she learns that a European king will soon arrive for a hunting party, her fairy tale ideas of glamour and romance take a dark turn as she realizes the Pagets' lofty philosophical talk is at odds with the unfair labor practices that have enriched them. Their servants, the Gradys, descendants of formerly enslaved people, have long known this to be true and are making plans to form a utopian community on the Colorado prairie. Outside the manor walls, Moonstone is roiling with discontent. A handsome union organizer, along with labor leader Mary Harris, Mother Jones, is stirring up the quarry workers. The editor of the local newspaper, a bold woman who takes Sylvie on as apprentice, is publishing unflattering accounts of the Paget Company. Threats of violence permeate the air. Sylvie navigates between vastly different worlds and struggles to find her own voice amidst conflicting loves and loyalties. When the harsh and dangerous winter brings tragedy, Sylvie must choose between silence and revenge. The Night Ship by Jess Kidd. 1629, a newly orphaned young girl named Macon is bound for the Dutch East Indies on the Batavia, one of the greatest ships of the Dutch Golden Age. Curious and mischievous, Macon spends the long journey going on misadventures above and below the deck, searching for a mythical monster, but the true monsters might be closer than she thinks. So then we skip forward to 1989. A lonely boy named Gil is sent to live off the coast of Western Australia, among the seasonal fishing communities where his late mother once resided. There, on the tiny reef-shrouded island, he discovers the story of an infamous shipwreck. Ooh, so yeah, 1629 and 1989 are going to collide because of a shipwreck. Ooh, I love this. In the Shadow of a Queen by Heather B. Moore. Princess Louise's life is upended after her father's untimely death. Captive to the Queen's overwhelming mourning, Louise is forbidden to leave her mother's tight circle of control and is eventually relegated to the position of personal secretary to her mother, the same position each of her sisters held until they were married. Already an accomplished painter, Louise risks the Queen's wrath by exploring the art of sculpting, an activity viewed as unbefitting a woman. When Louise involves herself in the day's political matters, including championing the career of a female doctor and communicating with suffragettes, the Queen lays down the law to stop her and devotes her full energy to finding an acceptable match for her defiant daughter. Louise is considered the most beautiful and talented daughter of Queen Victoria, but finding a match for the princess is no easy feat. Protocols are broken, and Louise exerts her own will as she tries to find an open-minded husband who will support her free spirit. So yeah, this is pretty much the story of one of Queen Victoria's daughters. I'm not sure if this is like one of the oldest ones, one of the youngest ones, I'm not quite sure. The House in the Orchard by Elizabeth Brooks. In 1945, war widow Peggy is grateful to have inherited Orchard House from her husband's Aunt Maud. She looks forward to making a fresh start in rural Cambridgeshire with her young son. The moment she sets eyes on the rambling property, however, doubt sets in. From the bricked-up cellar to the scent of violets and rotting fruit, the place seems shrouded by dark mysteries. When Peggy discovers Maud's teenage diary gathering dust inside a broken desk, she begins to read, searching for answers. So then that goes back to 1876. Orphaned Maud is forced to leave London and her adored brother Frank to live with a stranger. Everyone, especially Frank, tells her not to trust Miss Greenaway, the enigmatic owner of Orchard House. But Maud can't help warming to her new guardian. Encouraged by Miss Greenaway to speak her mind, follow her curiosity, and form her own opinions, Maud finds herself discovering who she is for the first time and learning to love her new home in the orchard. That sounds good. Yeah, I'm liking that. Yeah, it's not really giving too much plot there on Goodreads. The Witch and the Czar by, oh boy, let's try to pronounce this one, you guys. Olesa Salnikova Gilmore? As a half-goddess possessing magic, Yaga is used to living on her own, her prior entanglements with mortals having led to heartbreak. She mostly keeps to her hut in the woods, where those in need of healing seek her out, even as they spread rumors about her supposed cruelty and wicked spells. But when her old friend Anastasia, now the wife of the Czar and suffering from a mysterious illness, arrives in her forest desperate for her protection, Yaga realizes the fate of all of Russia is tied to Anastasia's. Yaga must step out of the shadows to protect the land she loves. As she travels to Moscow, Yaga witnesses a 16th century Russia on the brink of chaos. Tsar Ivan, soon to become Ivan the Terrible, grows more volatile and tyrannical by the day, and Yaga believes the Tsarita is being poisoned by an unknown enemy. But what Yaga cannot know is that Ivan is being manipulated by powers far older and more fearsome than anyone can imagine. Ooh. And yeah, this is pretty much like a retelling of the story of Baba Yaga, it sounds like. Sounds really great. I can't wait for this. A Dreadful Splendor by B.R. Myers. In Victorian London, Genevieve Timmins poses as a spiritualist to swindle wealthy mourners until one misstep lands her in a jail cell awaiting the noose. Then a stranger arrives to make her a peculiar offer. The lord he serves, Mr. Pemberton, has been inconsolable since the tragic death of his beautiful bride-to-be. If Genevieve can perform a seance persuasive enough to bring the young lord peace, she will win her freedom. Soothing a grieving nobleman should be easy for someone of Genevieve's skill, but when she arrives at the grand Somerset Park estate, Mr. Pemberton is not the heartbroken lover she expected. The surly yet exceedingly handsome gentleman is certain that his fiancée was murdered, even though there is no evidence. Only a confession can bring justice now, and Mr. Pemberton decides Genevieve will help him out. will help him get it. With his knowledge of the household, and her talent for illusion, they can stage a haunting so convincing it will coax the killer into the light. However, when frightful incidents befall the manor, Genevieve realizes her tricks aren't required after all. She may be a fake, but Somerset's ghost could be all too real. This sounds great. I can't wait for this one too. The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless, and this takes place in 981 AD. The Viking king of Dublin is dead. His young widow, Gormflaith, has ambitions for her son and herself, but Ireland is a dangerous place, and kings tend not to stay kings for long. Gormflaith also has a secret. She is one of the Fomorians, an immortal race who can do fire magic. She has kept her powers hidden at all costs, for there are other immortals in this world, like the Tuatha De Danann, a race of warriors who are sworn to kill Fomorians. It sounds like there's a lot of Irish mythology going on in this. Fodla is one of the Tuatha De Danann. I'm just going to mumble it out and make sure, and maybe it sounds great. With the gift of healing. Her kind dwell hidden in a fortress, forbidden to live amongst the mortals. Fladla agrees to help her kin by going to spy on Brian Borew, a powerful man who aims to be High King of Ireland. She finds a land on the brink of war, a war she is desperate to stop. However, preventing the loss of mortal lives is not easy, with Ireland in turmoil and the Fomorians now on the rise. Sounds great. I definitely have not ever read anything about Irish mythology. This should be really good. The Italian Ballerina by Christy Cambron. Rome, 1943. With the fall of Italy's fascist government and the Nazi regime occupying the streets of Rome, British ballerina Julia Bradbury is stranded and forced to take refuge at a hospital on Tiber Island. But when she learns of a deadly sickness that is sweeping through the quarantine wards, a fake disease known only as Syndrome K, she is drawn into one of the greatest cons in history. Alongside hospital staff, friars of the adjoining church, and 2 allied medics, Julia risks everything to rescue Italian Jews from the deadly clutches of the Holocaust. But when one little girl who dreams of becoming a ballerina arrives at their door, Julia and the others are determined to reunite the young dancer with her family, if only she would reveal one crucial secret: her name. And then, yeah, there is like a present-day setting in there as well, but yeah, I'll just focus on the historical setting for this novel. That sounds really good. I like the synopsis of that one. The Opera Sisters by Marianne Monson. British sisters Ida and Louise Cook enjoy their quiet, unassuming lives in South London. Ida writes romance novels and Louise works as a secretary. In the evenings, the sisters indulge in their shared love for opera, saving their money to buy records and attend performances throughout England and Europe, becoming well known by both performers and fellow opera lovers. But when Hitler seizes power in 1933, he begins targeting and persecuting German Jews, passing laws that restrict their rights and their lives. The sisters continue their trips to the German opera houses, but soon Jewish members of the opera community covertly approach the sisters, worried that they will be stripped of their wealth and forced to leave their homes and the country. Danger looms on the horizon, threatening to spill across all of Europe's borders. Ida and Louise vow to help, but how can 2 ordinary working-class women with limited means make a difference? And the last recommendation I have here, Yesterday's Spy by Tom Bradby. London, 1953. Harry Towers is a recently retired and even more recently widowed British intelligence officer. After a night spent drinking away his sorrows, he is awakened by a phone call with chilling news. His estranged son, Sean, has gone missing in Tehran after writing a damning article about the involvement of government officials in the opium trade. Harry springs to action, eager to reunite with his son and atone for past wrongs. When he arrives in Tehran, a city roiling with political dissatisfaction and on the brink of a historic coup, Harry joins forces with Sean's Iranian girlfriend, Shaznaz, seemingly the only other person interested in finding the disappeared journalist. Harry's career as a spy soon proves perfect training for his much more personal mission, as American, British, Iranian, and French players flit in and out of the scene. But as the first attempt at a coup in the city fails and foreign powers jockey for oil, money, and influence, Sean's disappearance takes on a more sinister tone. Was he really taken in retribution for his reporting, or is this an attempt to silence a globally significant revelation he was preparing to make? Or most terrifying of all, does Sean's disappearance have nothing to do with him at all? Has Harry's past caught up to them all? Ooh, yes. I previously read Tom Bradby's The White Russian, one of my top favorite books, and I've been eager to read something else from him. It's been a long time since he's published anything. So you guys, that is it for my recommendations for upcoming historical fiction going through the rest of the year. In the comments below, have I left something out? I probably have. The historical fiction genre just grows and grows Every year it is humongous. There are literally hundreds upon hundreds of books in this genre, and yet this is really only a very small sampling. So I definitely recommend you do your own research, you know, to kind of find maybe the various different genres within the genre that you prefer, because yeah, these were kind of the ones that were kind of speaking to me, that were kind of floating my boat, I guess. So yeah, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.